Coming to you from a cozy little condo high atop Old 4th Ward, Atlanta. Welcome to The Ron Show on America One Radio. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
Well, if you thought last week was crazy, we begin this week's first show of the week discussing, of all things, another assassination attempt on the former president of the United States, Donald Trump, who was playing golf on one of his golf courses in Florida when, and this is where things get kind of iffy. Someone found a gun pointing through a fence, and a perp was spotted, took off, got in a car, was chased down, found. He apparently is a pro-Ukrainian mercenary nut who had access to an AK-47. We're not going to talk about that, though. We're going to talk about the fact that Donald Trump has again been targeted for assassination, and we'll spend the next few days or weeks or maybe 2 months, I would say, at the most, hearing about how Donald Trump, this is from the right, is a martyr who clearly has a target on his back from, air quotes, leftists and, air quote, Marxists because he's coming for them or he fights for America, all this ridiculous tableau stuff. My immediate thought, and again, I'm not laughing at anybody attempting to assassinate anybody. My immediate thought was, gosh, this guy's really not liked. I'm not saying anything that's not obvious. He trails in polls. His favorability number has always been underwater. He never won any popular vote. And he himself foments division in such a way that, well, we're seeing this unfold in Springfield, Ohio, for crying out loud. A city of about 58,000 in a mostly rural county. A county, by the way, that he carried. A county governed by Republicans in a state governed by Mike DeWine, a Republican who is, refreshingly speaking, like a sane individual when asked about what's happening on the ground in Springfield, that community in his home state. And, oh, by the way, isn't being xenophobic or racist, isn't being inhospitable to the immigrant community in Springfield, Ohio, which is there born of necessity. There are jobs, there are employers and businesses that are happy to have those legal Haitian immigrants in that community to fill tables at restaurants, buy goods at retailers, and, oh, by the way, work shifts at the various manufacturing facilities in and around Springfield, Ohio. So I spent the past few days pondering, how do I get a sense of what's going on in Springfield? Do I talk to a local representative? And there are very few locally elected representatives who will go on a liberal progressive show because it is a red county, a red town in a red state. I thought, okay, so do I reach out to the County Democratic Party? I did reach out to the chair of the Clark County Democratic Party, Austin Smith. He declined. I thought, where do I go from here? Do I look for an opinion writer? And I started looking at news sources in and around Clark County in Springfield, Ohio, and I came across an article that, I'm just going to say it, it warmed my heart. This article appeared in the Springfield News Sun yesterday. And by the way, if you're a Simpsons fan, is this not delicious? Every time Springfield comes up, I keep hearing the Simpsons theme song and whatever. Sydney Dawes writes that a Springfield area church is asking organizations that work with Haitian residents to help pass out cards people can use to greet people in Creole. The cards say, Mwen bayen kanten ula, Chris S. Renman ua mwen men tu, which translates to, I'm glad you're here, Christ loves you, and so do I. And by the way, I don't know a lick of Creole. I could have totally mangled that. But the message is clear. I'm glad you're here, Christ loves you, and so do I. The messaging couldn't be more clear, right? Sidney Dawes' article continues. Pastor Carl Ruby of Central Christian Church wants to see 15,000 cards go out into the community. And I would read more from the article, but I actually reached out to Pastor Carl Ruby of Central Christian Church, who will join me later in the show, to give us a sense of what is happening in his community, how Springfield got to where it is, and where it can go from here, and how we can help. That's right. Yours truly, the 50-year-old, Georgia-born, gay atheist, again reached out to a minister to help spread their word. Why? Because I grew up in a Southern Baptist church, and I was married into a Pentecostal community, so to speak. My ex-father-in-law is a Pentecostal minister. So I had to go to church plenty often when we'd go to visit the family. And I'm not stupid. I sit in a room long enough and I listen to a message. I actually digest a good bit of the message. Now, I mean, it doesn't change the fact that I'm a non-believer. I'm an atheist. But there are still valuable lessons to learn from the Bible, from the Word of Jesus, the Word of God, if you will, and lessons to take from that and live in your daily life. I could say the same from nonfiction. Don't make me go there. I could say the same from works of nonfiction or works from fiction. There are a lot of lessons that can be learned from a lot of books. But I'm struck by the oddity of growing up, again, in the evangelical South and knowing the political leanings of the folks that attend your run-of-the-mill Southern Baptist church and hear that message and then leave that church and then worship one Donald John Trump. Anyway, Pastor Carl Ruby is going to talk to us about what's going on in Springfield, why his church and his congregation is so welcoming to the Haitian immigrant, and how it got to be that a community clearly stretched thin resource-wise with a growth of population. Again, what were they, 55, 58,000 and 12, 15,000 Haitian immigrants come there. Needed, by the way, by local manufacturing. The city is growing when it has been shrinking for decades in the Rust Belt. Largely welcome by the Chamber of Commerce and all the business community because there were jobs that needed to be filled. And lo and behold, retailers and restaurants are enjoying the influx of business. And yet today, like literally today and all of this past week, that community, again, a pro-Trump community, a Republican county, a Republican town, is dealing with outside hate groups, white nationalist organizations, and other murky, disgusting, divisive, racist organizations. They have descended on that town, doing interviews for their websites and handing out literature and putting people that live there in fear. Bomb threats to City Hall, to community organizations, to schools, the local college having to go virtual. That's not a made-up story. That is a legitimate story. Unlike the eating cats and dogs trope that somehow meandered its way onto the presidential debate stage last Tuesday, and in the aftermath has created this hostile environment in an otherwise quiet community that was just seeking some help from its elected representation. The mayor of the city literally reaching out to J.D. Vance's, the senator from Ohio, office for some assistance in dealing with the community's stretched thin resources. Not come and chase away the Haitian immigrant community, who are all there legally, but to help the city bridge the gap in resources. And can I just tell you, I find this entire story to be somewhat just emblematic, I guess, of the immigration conversation this country needs to have. Our economy needs immigration. We need more workers in our economy. Springfield, Ohio obviously needed more workers in their economy. And they're benefiting from it. Their economy is benefiting from it. Is there a shortage? Housing, language barriers in the school system, overcrowding, roads and schools and healthcare. Obviously, yes, that's going to happen when you have such a large influx in such a short period of time. That speaks more to government being flat-footed in preparation, though. I mean, you're sitting in traffic likely this morning listening or heading home, and you're sitting in traffic that's not moving because government is flat-footed when it comes to dealing with needs ahead of time. And then they make it worse by dealing with the situation as you're still having to drive through. I digress. I'm not going to get into a DOT rant. But that's it just epitomizes how this country tends to operate over the last, 50, 60 years or so. Government reacts to a problem with its solutions and kind of gums up the problem even more, getting us that solution eventually. I said on this very show, in the midst of the post-pandemic supply chain crunch, that the solution was so obvious. In fact, I believe it was the Haitian immigrant, the community, that I said, well, you've got a ton of them sitting right here wanting to come into this country, needing something to do to earn their way in, or seeking something to do to earn their way in. And we had cargo ships off ports who couldn't unload because there were no workers there to unload at the ports. And that was causing the supply chain crunch and higher prices on the shelves. And the obvious solution was sitting right there. I said that on this show. I would love to go back and find it, but gosh, it's too early in the morning. Maybe tomorrow I'll find it and say, see, I told you this. But I did. I was saying this. And I was like, why aren't other politicians seeing this? This Springfield situation is so emblematic of how this country is unable to connect its dots sometimes. Like, we have a labor shortage. Our economy needs more people. There's room in this country for more people. Maybe not housing, maybe not classrooms, but room for more people. Immigration grows our economy, and we want to grow our economy. We want to continue being the strongest, fastest growing economy on the planet. And we're not going to do it just by aging out, which is kind of what this country's doing without the immigrant influx. Never mind the fact that we kind of owe it to a lot of the immigrant coming to this country, specifically from Central and South America, given all of our, involvement in their affairs, environmental dismissivism on our political part here to not deal or address climate change, the destabilization of their economies because of that, because of our meddling in their political affairs, picking winners and losers economically. But if the American voter can kind of parse through this very situation and delineate cause and effect and two visions for how to address this, this could be a learning moment. You have one side that wants to demonize and one side that wants to, I'm going to use a word here that isn't a word, governize. The city of Springfield needs an influx of resources. The mayor reached out to its elected representative at the federal level. Big mistake, J.D. Vance. Yeah, it's Sherrod Brown. You went J.D. Vance. And you see how he reacts and how his running mate reacts. And I'm not even going to go partisan here. I'm not going to go, well, here's what the left says. I'm going to go with, here's what a sane Republican from Ohio says. Governor Mike DeWine on This Week with George Stephanopoulos, Martha Raddatz filling in on ABC. That's a lot to say.
Let me tell you what we do know, though. What we know is that the Haitians who are in Springfield are legal. They came to Springfield to work. Ohio is on the move, and Springfield has really made a great resurgence with a lot of companies coming in. These Haitians came in to work for these companies. What the companies tell us is that they are very good workers. They're very happy to have them there. And frankly, that's helped the economy. Now, are there problems connected? Well, sure. When you go from a population of 58,000 and add 15,000 people onto that, you're going to have some challenges and some problems. And we're addressing those. We're working on those every single day. Primary care is essential. The other thing we're working a lot on is driving. We have Haitians who, frankly, many times have not driven before. We need to get more driver's training, and we're working on that. So these are things that we are working on. Springfield is moving forward. I've always felt that, as the governor of the state of Ohio, we want people who want to come here who are legal, where they come from another state or another country, want to work.
Governor Mike DeWine, a Republican from Ohio, sounding a lot like Ronald Reagan and George Bush. Remember, have you seen the debate clip from 1980s primary season where they were both speaking about the hardworking immigrant that comes here? Let me find that. So this clip has nothing to do with Haitian immigration, but it has everything to do with legal and illegal immigration and use of resources and what to do with the workforce. This question was posed to both George H.W. Bush and Ronald Reagan in the primary season of the 1980 presidential election.
Yes, my name is David Grossberg, and I'd like to know, do you think the children of illegal aliens should be allowed to attend Texas public schools free, or do you think that their parents should pay for their education?
I'd like to see something done about the illegal alien problem that would be so sensitive and so understanding about labor needs and human needs that problem wouldn't come up. But today, if those people are here, I would reluctantly say I think they would get whatever it is that they're, what the society is giving to their neighbors. But the problem has to be solved. The problem has to be solved because as we have kind of made illegal some kinds of labor that I'd like to see legal, we're doing two things. We're creating a whole society of really honorable, decent, family-loving people that are in violation of the law, and secondly, we're exacerbating relations with Mexico. Yep. The answer to your question is much more fundamental than whether they attend Houston schools, it seems to me. I don't want to see if they're living here, I don't want to see a whole thing of 6- and 8-year-old kids being made, one totally uneducated and made to feel that they're living with outside the law. Let's address ourselves to the fundamentals. These are good people, strong people. Part of my family is a Mexican.
And then Ronald Reagan.
I think the time has come that the United States and our neighbors, particularly our neighbor to the south, should have a better understanding and a better relationship than we've ever had. And I think that we haven't been sensitive enough to our size and our power. They have a problem of 40 to 50% unemployment. Now, this cannot continue without the possibility arising with regard to that other country that we talked about, of Cuba and what it is stirring up, of the possibility of trouble below the border, and we could have a very hostile and strange neighbor on our border. Rather than making them or talking about putting up a fence, why don't we work out some recognition of our mutual problems, make it possible for them to come here legally with a work permit, and then while they're working and earning here, they pay taxes here. And when they want to go back, they can go back, and they can cross and open the border both ways by understanding their problems. This is the only safety valve right now they have with that unemployment that probably keeps the lid from blowing off down there. And I think we could have a fine relationship, and it would solve the problem you mentioned also.
Boy, those mamby-pamby liberal anti-American socialist Marx... Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush just 44 years ago. Mike DeWine, governor of Ohio, sounding a lot like that kind of Republican. We need more of those. Quick break. This is The Ron Show. We're running super late. On America One Radio, Progressive Voices via TuneIn. You can follow The Ron Show on your preferred social media platforms at Ron Show ATL. Twitter, X, sorry. You've got Facebook, you've got Instagram. Yes, we're on Threads too, at Ron Show ATL. Oh my God, he's not even talking about the Trump assassination attempt. No, okay, I'm happy to talk about that. I find that this is somewhat ironic here that, and this isn't just reflective on the way I'm handling today's show. This is the news cycle. This is social media. Is it the lead story? Yes. Is it the stop everything, going to talk about it for 3-4 weeks story that presidential assassination attempt used to be? No, because that's where we are in society, y'all. I mean, there's some irony to how desensitized America is to another Trump assassination attempt, as similarly as this nation is to mass shootings. Oh, look, another nut with a high-capacity gun. What are you going to do, right? Thoughts and prayers. Let's box them up and ship them out to whomever needs them. Hand-wringing about how effective the Secret Service is. Yeah, parents throughout the country are wondering that about school resource officers, too, because we're not going to address the real problem. What are you going to do? Anyway, Pastor Carl Ruby with the Central Christian Church in Springfield, Ohio, among a large number of religious leaders in that community welcoming the Haitian immigrant. He's up next on The Ron Show. Stand by.
Broadcasting 5 days a week to make common sense common again. This is The Ron Show on America One Radio.
So, over the last few days, I've been pondering, how do I reach into the city of Springfield, Ohio, and kind of get a sense of what's going on from a lens, a perspective that I think might actually sound sane, maybe a little unbiased, but just human. And I reached out to the Clark County Democratic Party. They actually said, we'd kind of like to stay out of the fray. I thought about reaching out to local news organizations or an opinion writer. And then I came across this article while looking for an opinion writer that speaks to a church, the Central Christian Church there. And Pastor Carl Ruby joining us on the phone. They have been among several of the local ministerial organizations that have actually, listened to what the Bible said about welcoming the immigrant. And that's why I've got Pastor Carl Ruby on. You and your church have, the thing that caught my eye was the cards. You guys had given out a ton of cards, just letting the Haitian immigrant know that they're welcome, that they have a place, that they have people that they can lean on in such troubled times. Tell me a little bit more about that project. First of all, welcome to the show. Thank you.
That was an idea I had driving to church yesterday, and it's just beginning. And I'm working with another group in town called the Nehemiah Foundation that connects all the churches in town. I think it was last Thursday, I decided to call a press conference with all the pastors in town, just trying to speak some sanity into the situation. And as a result of that, it was great to see pastors. There were fundamentalists, evangelicals, progressives, Democratic pastors, Republican pastors, all standing arm in arm, saying obedience to Jesus involves welcoming immigrants and loving them. So that's kind of what, and all of us are kind of looking for ways that we can make a difference in Springfield, and that's an idea that's just now kind of taking off. And the card says, I'm glad that you're here. Jesus loves you, and so do I. And the idea is handing them out at Walmart, at laundromats, all the places where lots of Haitians seem to gather. So that is just beginning today.
So give me a sense, if you will. Again, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. I grew up in the suburban-ish rural South most of my life. And so I know how divided this country is. And I know the sort of rhetoric that can come specifically, again, in the South, the Protestant evangelical South, and their feelings on a number of issues that all trace back to politics. Give me a sense of how.
Let me just say that breaks my heart to see the way the church has responded in many ways, and it doesn't represent the gospel of Jesus.
You know, it's ironic. Before I was while I was prepping for this interview, for the few minutes that I had to do so, I kept telling myself, I'm not even a religious person. Like, I grew up in a Southern Baptist church, but I'm not a religious person anymore. But I still took away, I believe, some values, some rules, some mores from growing up in the church that I remember that just make me scratch my head. And I'm not one of those. Oh, I left the church because of Jesus' follow. That's not it at all. It's just I don't know. Another conversation for another day. But I just find myself mystified by having attended church all the years that I did growing up, and even I married into a minister's family for 10 years, and going to a congregational holiness church and listening to the message. And it's like as soon as the folks leave the door, it's all out of sight, out of mind, in one ear, out the other, because it's not about what they're hearing in the church. It's about how they're living their lives that just diametrically opposite of what
completely baffles me.
Yeah.
And part of it is I have a wonderful church. My church is all into this. But part of what pastors are up against is we get a congregation for an hour on Sunday mornings, and Fox News gets them for 10 hours a day.
That's true. That's true.
And that's had taken a huge negative toll on the church.
So my question was, as I was trying to get to, tell me what Springfield, Ohio is like. Is it just as divided as the rest of America is? Is there a lot of vitriol? Are there protests? Are there people on the streets holding signs, angry at the rush of immigration there? What?
Yeah. Springfield, we're in a rural county of 135,000 people.
Mm.
Springfield has somewhere between 50 and 60 people before all the Haitians came.
60,000 people, right? You said 50 to 60. Okay.
And we've been shrinking for 80 years.
Right.
This is the first time we've grown. And I see that as an extremely good thing. It doesn't come without challenges. I mean, to absorb this many people all of a sudden,
right?
It's stretching our health clinics. There are big lines at motor vehicles places and all of those things. So, the number of non-English speaking school students in our school system rose from 250 to 1,600 in a school system that only has 7,700 students. So there is a toll, but I feel like long term this could benefit our city so much. And it was a peaceful city until this happened. And then last year there was a school bus accident. A Haitian who was here legally but driving without a license hit a school bus, killed a student. It was a horrible tragedy. Maybe you've seen the student's parents go on news this week denouncing all this hate stuff. But it kind of blew up then. And I think it gave an excuse for people who have a very anti-immigrant stance to speak out and to kind of feel justified about it. And then it all died down. And then about 3 weeks ago, our city leaders, our city manager and our mayor reached out to J.D. Vance, who is our senator, asking for some help getting federal funds.
Which is what your representative is supposed. That's what they're there for. Your congressman, your senator. That's what they're there for.
Yeah, and instead of doing that, he politicized it. Apparently, he mentioned it at a Senate hearing, and then Fox News picked up on it. And then it just blew up. And as soon as that happened, hate groups started showing up
from outside.
There are There are a bunch. I mean, 2 of them have marched, but there are a lot more than that very active in town. We at our press conference. Someone came up to interview me, and shortly into the interview, I thought this doesn't feel right. And they're actually white supremacists are posing as journalists, trying to get people on video saying positive things about the Haitians. So it's a scary, frightening situation. And I don't know if this week is going to be any different, but last week it was like bomb threat after bomb threat. And they were all fake, but it's just sowing chaos in our city. KKK flyers have hit the streets. And this is just not Springfield. And I can't wait for it to pass. But who knows what what this week is going to bring.
Right. I mean, we've had the bomb threats at the schools. Schools have been canceled, or the local college is going virtual. It sounds like as much as having so much of a demographic change over the last few years in that city and county have been a strain. This is just added issues that are unnecessary.
Oh, absolutely. And my fear going into last week, I thought if President Trump mentions this debate, this is going to blow up. And we all know what happened. And it has.
Yeah. Ironically, there's one woman who believes that her post is at the center of this. She's all but recanted and regrets even sparking this outrage. How did that happen? That's what I'm trying to understand. How did one person's post become?
So city council meetings have been really, really combative. So what happens is these people who are, and it's the same group every week. It's not a large group of Springfielders. It's a relatively small group, but they come every week, and some of them express reasonable concerns, and others just go on racist rants.
Right.
And then and then what happens is in the Facebook comments below the video for the city council meeting, all of this stuff just takes off. And now they're forming closed Facebook groups. And my understanding is the police have looked into them, and a large number of the people in them aren't even from Springfield. It's picking up a national audience of people who are jumping on the bandwagon and stirring things up here.
I can only empathize. I can't imagine what it's like to live in a city of that size, not a remarkably large city, but to have the nation's, in some instances, the international journalistic community's eyes. The world is watching little Springfield, Ohio, going through all of this stuff. And this is a complicated situation. You spoke about how there was a need for something that sparked growth in that community. And I almost wonder if this is sort of a textbook example of how, those who are pro-immigrant have said, America's got room for immigrants. We need immigrants.
Yeah,
the economy
absolutely.
Needs immigrants.
Businesses in Springfield love them. I mean, there are
right.
factories where the entire shift is covered by Haitian immigrants right now.
And I remember we were going through the whole supply chain problem, and we had 15,000 Haitian immigrants who were coming to the country after, I think it was an earthquake maybe, and we had ships outside of ports that couldn't come to port because there was no one to offload them. And I remember saying on the air, we have a steady workforce that really wants to come here and earn their way into this country, and yet we don't have people who could be working at the ports to get the goods off the boats onto our shores to help with our supply chain. How am I the only one seeing the connection here? But this is the connection.
Absolutely.
And obviously, your city's dealing with a housing crunch and a healthcare crunch. The educational system is strained, obviously, and this is where state and federal resources would come into play. So that being said, reaching out to J.D. Vance didn't seem to help. Has the state been receptive? It seems that Governor Mike DeWine has been somewhat sane.
He's been amazing. He's been amazing. No, the governor, he's been just absolutely amazing. And he has a personal connection to Haiti. Part of his Catholic faith, he's done mission trips there. And there's a large school in Haiti named after his daughter who was killed in a car accident. So he has a very personal investment in Haiti, and he's just been wonderful.
Lastly, tell us a little bit about your church.
We are a small non-denominational church. I come out of an evangelical background and left that label over a host of issues, but my understanding of the gospel is still fairly similar. We have about 200 members. We're not a huge church, but before I became the pastor, I started a nonprofit group focused on welcoming immigrants to Clark County.
Okay.
So the whole time I've been here, I've done many sermons on what the Bible says about it. There are 92 passages in the Bible that talk about immigrants, and there are few social justice issues that the Bible would be clearer on than they are on this issue. Matter of fact, immigrants make the 10 Commandments. So if you look at the commandment on Sabbath rest, it says, make sure that the immigrants who are working among you also get a rest. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus said, everyone says hi to their own people, but if you're truly righteous, you're going to greet people who are strangers. And the word for strangers is the word for immigrants. And he says, even pagans greet their own people. So the Bible's super clear on this, and it mystifies me that so many evangelicals have completely ignored that. And, yeah.
Well, from your position that there's a lot in the Bible that is inconvenient to modern living, or even taken out of context and twisted. The Bible was used to keep the enslaved. So it doesn't surprise me that in fact, I find it's human nature that folks can take religious doctrine and either decide what to affix to their life or not to affix to their life for whatever conveniences them. And in a country with a long and storied and ugly history of division, specifically on race, it doesn't surprise me, honestly. And I hate to say that, but we are where we are, and we see what we see.
And I think at the heart of it, among evangelicals and many, is a misunderstanding of the gospel. And they see it as it's all about Jesus saving me so that I can go to heaven. And while I believe that's true, I think that the broader gospel, the bigger gospel, is that Jesus saves us so that we can do justice for oppressed people. And we are to be the hands and feet and mouth of Christ and to show love for our neighbors. And that's the gospel that I'm committed to. And I think it's a beautiful gospel. And we need more people getting on board with it.
I won't disagree with you there. 1,000%. So I'm going to include a link to your church in our show notes today at ronshowatl.com, Central Christian Church. How are you guys handling the resources? Do you need donations? Or you said you also fund or you work with a nonprofit in Clark County, the Welcome to Immigrant. Yeah. Would you prefer I lead people there?
If there are any progressives in Springfield or around looking for a church, I'd love to have them come. Yeah. I would point donations toward the Haitian Community Help and Support Center. All right. That's a new nonprofit. Our church helped set it up, but it's run completely by Haitians, and they are doing a wonderful job. All right, then we'll do that. But they could really use donations. Yeah.
We will do that.
Haitian Community Help and Support Center.
All right, thank you so much.
You can probably find a link to them.
Fair enough. All right, Pastor Carl Ruby, thank you so much, and thank you, church, as well, for being the welcoming voice for those who are obviously probably right now, at the very least, rattled, if not in fear for their lives, in what used to be docile Springfield, Ohio.
Yeah, and God bless you and all the people who listen to your show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Have a good day.
Yeah, bye-bye.
The Ron Show on America One Radio and Progressive Voices via TuneIn. All right, final few minutes of today's Ron Show. You heard from the Central Christian Church, Pastor Carl Ruby, minutes ago. Ironically enough, get this. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution's Greg Bluestein reporting that Senator J.D. Vance, former President Donald Trump's running mate, will deliver a speech today targeting evangelical voters in Metro Atlanta with a stop that marks a delicate moment on Georgia's campaign trail. The Georgia Faith and Freedom Coalition annual dinner at the Cobb Galleria Center will be the first time Governor Brian Kemp and Vance will attend the same event in Georgia this election season as Republicans try to unite against Vice President Kamala Harris, using the Georgia Faith and Freedom Coalition dinner to do so. I'm certain a real and biblical discussion about welcoming the immigrant will come up. The party of personal responsibility. The GOP always telling us, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. They're never willing to admit their own culpability in the creation of a problem. J.D. Vance yesterday with Dana Bash on CNN.
You've heard a lot of the media focusing on every possible distraction from the story in Springfield. You've heard them focus on these Proud Boys marches. You've heard just in this interview, Dana, the suggestion that because some psychopath is calling it a bomb threat, somehow we have to then ignore 40,000 Springfieldians who are having their lives worsened by Kamala Harris's policies. Well, what is the implication implication, Dana? I actually love to have this conversation right now live on air.
Right.
What is the implication when you say you calling out these problems has caused a bomb threat? You accused me of causing a bomb threat. Doesn't that mean you should shut up about the residents of Springfield? Don't you realize you're engaged in basic propaganda to silence the concerns of American citizens?
I was quoting the actual mayor of Springfield, Ohio, begging after the bomb threats, begging federal officials, to please stop putting negative attention on his city. And I'm not talking about the policies. I'm not talking about the very real challenges that Springfield has. I'm talking about baseless rumors about Haitians eating dogs and cats. And that, after that was said on a debate stage, that is when these bomb threats started.
From WSYX-TV in Columbus, Ohio, covering the story, Daryl Rowland reports.
We asked the mayor why he interpreted the threat as targeted toward Haitians, whose rapid influx into Springfield has overwhelmed local resources.
There was enough negative language towards immigrants, towards Haitian folks that would bring enough concern. And then when it's followed up with a threat at the end of a bomb threat, then, like I said, it was just the beginning of the conclusion of that they're going to threaten to harm people.
We asked Rue, a Republican, if Donald Trump's false claim during Tuesday night's debate about Haitians eating cats and dogs could be linked to today's threat. He wouldn't answer directly, but did say,
when a federal politician has the stage and they don't take the opportunity to build up a community instead of inadvertently not understanding what their words are, what they're going to do to a community, it can really hurt a community like it's hurting ours. We've been punched in a way we should not have been punched.
Absolutely. I mean, that is the mayor who reached out to Senator J.D. Vance's office for help in addressing the city's needs. And you know full well that Joe Biden would love to cut a check or divert some funds in some kind of way to help Republican Governor Mike DeWine and Republicans on the ground in Springfield, Ohio, address this problem. I mean, if this were a forest fire in California and Trump were president, though, the mistake the Republican mayor of that city made was the Republican mayor went to the Republican senator and got some Republican non-governance. This is no different than the bipartisan immigration bill that languished because Donald Trump said, nope, don't fix this, save it so we can politicize it, and then address it when I'm president. No different.
And Rue had a final word for the political types who are spinning the Springfield story to help their agenda.
All these federal politicians that have negatively spun our city, they need to know they're hurting our city, and it was their words that did it.
But J.D. Vance wants none of that smoke.
The Springfield mayor, he's dealing with a lot of terrible things. I certainly sympathize with the guy, and we're going to try to help him out. But he did not accuse me of inciting a bomb threat. He just didn't. And if we're going to take the firsthand accounts of people who are on the ground in Springfield, why don't you bring on some of the people on your program who say that the migrants are eating their pets? You're applying a double standard here. You're saying if one person accuses J.D. Vance, I'm going to take that person's word as the gospel truth, even if you misrepresent it. If you have another person who's saying they're eating the cats, you're going to completely ignore them, attack them, silence them, and harass them. That double standard is why people don't trust the media.
Honestly, as a pet owner, what worries me is that some Proud Boy is going to go into Springfield now and stage something to make it look like that, and we're going to have this conversation even further. Can I just tell you, the woman at the center of the Facebook post that led all this off, she's recanted. From the Hill, Erica Lee, a Springfield resident, recently authored a post on Facebook saying that her neighbor's cat was lost, and she was told it was because the pet was attacked by a Haitian immigrant. Kimberly Newton, Lee's neighbor, acknowledged this week to NewsGuard, I don't actually know the person who lost the cat. Newton added that the cat's owner was, quote, an acquaintance of a friend. Now, Lee has said she was sorry about the way the events unfolded with the unfounded conspiracy theories about Haitian immigrants amplified by both former President Trump and his vice presidential pick, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, saying it just exploded into something I didn't mean to happen.
And why we're not talking about public policy 51 days out from presidential election.
Because you won't admit you were misled or misinformed. All this to lessen Donald Trump's embarrassment. My God. That's going to do it for today's Ron Show. Replay 5 to 6 p.m. America One Radio, 7 to 8 p.m. Progressive Voices, and then via podcast. Show notes at ronshow.atl.com. Have a great day.